Hi, good day. I'm Ismail Jeffries, representing City of Cape Town Municipality, and I'll be presenting how we are dealing with grid impact studies within the municipality. So in terms of our setup, our department responsible for small-scale embedded generation, as well as embedded generation, as well as service connections, are falling under the engineering organogram. We've also got our transmission and distribution development systems sections within the same branch, and our drawings and GIS sections, and our project implementation section. The section responsible for service connection is indicated on the slides, and that is the department citywide responsible for SSEG and service connections. So this is for the Western Cape. We are fitting in, as I can show on the cursor, this portion here, City of Cape Town, but in the bigger scheme of things, we fall under the Western Cape Province. And this has been taken from Eskom in terms of the available generation capacity per province. And for the Western Cape, it's sitting at 1,820 megawatts. So on this slide, you can see basically the City of Cape Town metropolitan boundary area. The yellow area is residents within the City of Cape Town area being supplied by the City of Cape Town municipality, and the blue is customers being supplied by Eskom, who is also a service provider within the City of Cape Town metropolitan boundary area. The City of Cape Town has been a pioneer within the small-scale embedded generation environment. We have been spearheading with a lot of things. So in 2008, people have started, or residents have started installing SSEG, and it has been increasing. 2014, the City of Cape Town started with the publishing the SSEG guidelines as to how we will deal with feed-in tariffs. 2015, we started adopting the technical standards, specifically also on the smart metering. Then 2016, a lot of the installations for grid tied started to formalize, and we have developed the City of Cape Town SSEG requirements document, which basically spells out what we allow, why we do it, how we do it, and what can be done, what are the limits, etc. Then in 2017, we basically got the smart metering systems going with the municipality and between Eskom. Then we moved over to 2018. We have started then with the widespread awareness, our media campaigns. 2021, the Electrical Regulation Act Schedule 2 was published, where the NERSA indicated that we do not need a license for greater than one MVA installations. 2022, the net billing commercial requirements was further streamlined in terms of supply chain management process and exemptions that we got from the finance minister. 2023, we started streamlining all the SSEG type of systems together with the 097, NRS 097. There's two, there's three, and there's two, there's one document. And that helped a lot with streamlining the process for the LV embedded in generations. 2024, the City of Cape Town implemented its online system, where these streamlined systems from the NRS documents was used to implement the online system, specifically on the residential installations, which allowed a much quicker turnaround as a result. So in terms of the grid impact studies process, we obviously have a document from the municipalities in terms of the guide for municipalities in terms of how we're processing generator installations greater than 1 MVA. Then there is the renewable plant, power plant grid code as well. Technical requirements, we obviously look at the South African grid codes, which basically stipulate the requirements, specifically in terms of protection, quality of supply, as well as the battery energy storage facility type of systems, the requirements there. Then we've got the whole suite of the NRS documents, or importantly also the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and then obviously the electricity bylaws that's available in municipalities. Case studies less than equal than 1 MVA, as we would call it, the streamlined LV processes we follow. So in terms of the renewable power plant categories, we've got the category A, A1, A2, A3, which is predominantly less than 1 MVA and typically within the LV environment. And this is the simplified method that we apply, which is stipulated in NRS 097-2-3. So the blue line represents where you've got a customer that is applied from a transformer, a dedicated supply to that property. Dedicated meaning here that it only goes to that property, no other customers are on that feeder. In terms of the green line is the seed, so that is basically where you have a kiosk with 9 or 12 other customers being supplied from that same kiosk, and for that reason it is deemed seed. And then how we then basically deal with those seed customers, we are using the streamlined approach where we allow 25% of the maximum export capacity of the utility installed capacity, meaning the customer's supply of 60M single phase. He's got a UIC and an NPR of 13.8 kVA, and we're using 25% of that to determine his maximum export capacity, and that is should therefore not exceed the 25% for said customers. And the same for dedicated customers, we've got 75%, and it should not exceed the maximum export capacity should not be greater than 75% of the utility installed capacity. This is just a workflow in terms of how we deal with the shared and the dedicated. Basically the same in terms of the process, the only difference being for the shared is 25% maximum export capacity, and for the 75% for dedicated. Then as you come lower down, we also have other criteria in terms of the upstream transformers. So the sum of the maximum export capacity should not exceed 75% of the transformer rating, as well as the sum of the maximum export capacity on the MV feeder should not exceed 15% of the peak load. If you meet that criteria, you can basically proceed with the installation. If not, a red flag needs to be put onto that system, and further studies or network upgrades might be required to be able to facilitate that connection. We've also put these tables in the NRS 097-2-3 to make it easier. So these are the maximum export capacity for the 25%, for example, for the various circuit breaker sizes, meaning then a customer with a single phase of a 60M supply, for example, he cannot exceed the maximum export capacity of 3.45 kVA. His MPR nameplate rating and the utility installed capacity will be 13.8 kVA, and the MCC, the maximum charging current for the battery, should be basically 25% of the UIC, and in this case, in terms of M, comes to 15 amps. And we can basically use this table to determine if the customer falls within these limits and thereby approve the system. The same table, table 2, we have for the dedicated customers. And as you can see here, these are obviously then the bigger supply, starting from 125 amps right up to 1,500 amps, which is typically the capacity up to 1 MVA with the corresponding limits. So this graph basically just indicates how the number of applications per month for these years have increased. And as you can see, 2016, 2017, as I've indicated with the previous slide, we started receiving applications for SSEG installations. And then suddenly this big jump here in 2023, and that was unfortunately due to the result of all the blackouts we had with load shedding, where the numbers, as you can see, in 2022, the numbers was averaging at 200 applications per month, and it went right up to 1,400 applications a month. And then it luckily came down in 2024 where the load shedding stopped, and you can still see a big increase in numbers of installations. And those ones circled in the red are basically then for the right reasons, not for due to the blackouts or the load shedding we experienced, but for a greener economy, reducing our carbon footprint, environmental friendliness. And then obviously during that time also we had quite a significant drop in the inverter battery as well as the panel prices. And therefore residents also took exploit the opportunity to install the SSEG. So our online app we've developed in 2024, and basically it's a web-based interface for customers. We call it the Energy Tile. So the customers basically register on the Energy Tile, and once they're in the Energy Tile, they can basically go and apply with the red square here, apply for the small scale embedded generation. As you can see, the one to the right is apply for new or modified electricity supply. That is what we call our service connection app as well. So in terms of us pioneering this field, this is where you can see the numbers. So total system capacity of all the installed installations, which is now sitting at a total of just over 32,000 number of installations. But the total capacity here is only for the approved systems of just over 16,000 installations, of which we have a total capacity of 226.94 MVA for that 16,000 systems. And 90% of those installations are residential and they contribute 10% to this capacity, whereas the opposite is true for the commercial, where 90% of those capacity is contributed towards the commercial customers, but they're only 10% of the number of 16,000 installations. Then in terms of our inverters, because in the absence of the South African Bureau standards not approving these inverters in terms of type testing, for us to ensure that they actually do comply with the NRS 097-2-1 specifications, we took it upon ourselves to basically get the suppliers to provide us with the required certificates and test reports to ensure that it does comply with that standard. And since inception, we have basically now over 2,000 approved inverters and just over 70 different types of inverters, makes and brands. And the graph basically this indicates with the latest 2024 edition 3 of the NRS 097-2-1, we have since inception of that standards seen a significant increase in number of inverters that have been tested according to the latest standard. What we do in GIS, basically what we do is we export all of these SSEG data from the web-based app into GIS, and this is a geographical representation of all the SSEG within our metropolitan boundary area, and the different colors of the dots basically just represent the different statuses. For example, the red ones will indicate that they are illegal installations. and the green ones will be approved installations, and then the other colors basically in process, etc. Zooming basically into that, you can see here still the blue dots. Those represent the SACG installations. And then you basically see the red and blue lines. Those are the electrical network. And then the red line is the MV network. The blue line is the LV network. The MK there is the meter kiosk. And this is basically how all of these SACG installations tie up into the electrical network, where we can basically ensure that in terms of the NRS 097-2-3, that the 75% of the maximum export capacity of the transformer rating is not exceeded. And this is basically that same representation, just with the map attached, where you can clearly see this big property here in the center with the SSEG, and the dot is smack bang where the panels are, and then that's the network surrounding, and then obviously here with the residential area next to this big mall, you can see those installations onto those properties roofs as well. Case study is greater than 1 MVA. So we have what we call a EEB 705 document, which is basically the standard for the interconnection of embedded generations for the medium voltage and high voltage. And we've got standard diagrams here, basically depicting how these SSEG can be connected to our network. The red circle there basically indicate the one option where it is done via a generator transformer. The other one next to it is without a generator transformer, using the customer transformer where the SSHG is embedded into the LV network. Both basically acceptable. But then with the second drawing, you will see we have introduced what we call a stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 protection. So the stage 1 is basically then on the LV side of the customer's network, where those breakers then needs to be automated, where it can basically then trip for any out of bounds conditions. Should that not trip for out of bounds conditions, we go to stage 2, which is then the customer's MV breaker. And if all of that fails, stage 3 is where we from the City of Cape Town is able to open our supply breaker to the customer, and the entire installation will then be basically switched off. And these are just basically the protection that we can ensure for any out of bound conditions for the greater than 1 MVA systems. This is a typical single line diagram of a MV system. This one specifically is something like 4 MVA. And then here you can basically see on the customer side that they are installing the inverters on different transformers within the customer installation. Obviously not on all the transformers, only on the transformers where they want to be able to pick up whatever loads. And then that with the purple lines is all connected to a centralized system, which then are able to communicate from a SCADA and control and functionality perspective to the network control center from the municipality. So specific case, for example, where we have an authorized capacity, also known as the notified maximum demand of 2500 kVA, the customer have a PV, existing PV of 909 kVA installed, and then he wants to add a battery energy storage system of 1900 kVA. Therefore, the total would be 2890 MVA. So here we have some challenges where the customers deem the battery systems as backup and therefore do not want to be added to the PV system, but these are what we refer to as AC coupled systems, and they are using basically battery inverters to be able to connect the batteries to the AC side as backup. And for that reason, we basically add them together because that will be the total impact we will see from the network. So in this particular case, for example, the total that wants to be installed is 2.89 kVA versus a 2.5 kVA NMD. So in this case, there is um, a shortfall of 390 kVA, and therefore the customer would need to pay what we call said network charges to allow him to install the system, or he can reduce the battery energy storage system with that amount to be able to continue with the installation. We typically do from our side. Luckily, we do have the skills and expertise and resources internally to be able to continue with the studies. So typically we do the hosting studies. We've got various scenarios. These are not all the scenarios, but just mention some of them. For example, we would do the load flow studies under normal operating conditions. Then we will do it under where we would lose the contingency feeder, and we will see how the system basically operates under those conditions. And in this case, we also, for example, upstream on the main station transformer supplying this area, we also basically took one out of service. And then we typically look at the thermal loading, the rapid voltage change, and the voltage at the point of common coupling at the substation where the generation sources are connected, and that's typically a table of why you see the variations. In this case, the customer was connected as what we call the PenBev substation. The Pero South is the upstream main station supplying that station, and there you can see the percentages of the rapid voltage change at the PCC, which is in this case, for example, within limits. The simulating diagram, as you can see at the bottom, also includes all the other SECG or embedded generation systems in the network to obviously have a more holistic view of the impact. And then typically what we get, the customers do what we call a grid code compliance report, which is part of the RETEC approval process. And this is typically a summary of that report where they would basically, in terms of the grid code, need to comply with these various aspects in terms of the active power constraints, the active power gradients, the active power delta, the curtailment, the active power control, the power factor control, and voltage control with all those percentages. And in this case, after a test, for example, they would indicate if it passed or not, or is not maybe relevant to the particular plant. This dry run test report with the detail gets submitted to RETEC, which is the NERSA branch responsible for the approvals of the category B systems. And then after they have done their site inspections to verify those results, they typically provide an approval letter which basically indicates the following on the slide. The compliance assessment was based on the declared maximum set out active power. In this case, for this particular plant, it was 9.45 megawatts. And then they basically indicate based on the submitted information that was provided that the required plant has met the requirements and they are now basically deemed to operate commercially at that output power. The challenges we're experiencing on it's particularly on the LV side, we've got this South African National Standard document, SANS 10142-1, as we referred to, where in this particular section 1.7.12, we have got what we refer to alternative supplies. So this standard allows alternative supplies which includes PV installations. However, it does have a note, as I've indicated in red, where this document does not cover the generation plant, the integration, synchronizing requirements of the alternative supply operating in parallel with the main supply. So previously, we as a city of Cape Town allowed these type of alternative systems. They were also called off-grid systems, which we've then allowed residents to install with what we call non-approved inverters because it's deemed not to be in parallel with the main supply. However, what we have experienced with certain ad hoc site visits is that those systems were actually operating in parallel. Then our COCs, as part of the SANS document, is a requirement to be signed off by the electricians as part of the installation for work being done in the distribution board. And the single phase electricians, unfortunately, in terms of the electrical installation regulations, doesn't have the necessary DC installation experience, and therefore we do not allow them to be able to sign off these SSEG installations. And we do actually require professionally registered persons with EXA to sign off these systems together with the COC from the installation electrician or master electrician, but not the single phase tester electrician. So how we try to get around that, we are now countrywide, there's a work group working on the SENS 101 for 2, part 1 dash 2, and that part will specifically look at the SSG and specifically the DC requirements in a test report, a COC specifically for that. And once that is published, we will obviously follow that document, and it might be that the professional registered person would then not be required for the smaller residential systems. So what we've done in 2023, after our challenges with all of these off-grid systems and be using non-approved inverters, we no longer, since October 2023, allow it to be connected to our network. We insist on only grid-tied approved inverters. We also no longer allow standby SSEG applications which make use of the solar and PV or hybrid systems. And then we also treat all our systems as grid-tied, regardless if the system is wired as a standby system. And that's permissible from a legal standpoint, as the city has clear governance powers in respect of its own municipal grid. This enables us to obviously have the mandate with regards to the electricity, gas, and reticulation and the various powers that's conferred to us as part of the ERA, the Electricity Regulations Act. And then obviously all SCCG systems must use the approved inverters that has been tested according to the NRS 097-2-1 list, which we published on our website. And then the new SCCG online system, which we have designed around these simplified rules and with the approved inverters. Challenges on the MV side or the greater than 1 MVA type of systems. Here we're specifically mentioning the prosumer definition, a customer who both produces and consumes electricity. And the reason for that is to be able to distinguish between our renewable power plant grid code, which is actually written for the IPPs, the independent power producers, which is a pure generator as opposed to a prosumer. And with that, we do get lots of issues where obviously in certain instances when a customer installs a 5 megawatt embedded generation plant and they have a notified maximum demand of 7 MVA and they've got a load of around 6 to 7 MVA with the installed embedded generation of 5 MVA, they might not be exporting anything unless over weekends with minimal load and maximum generation, but that will be sort of only a few couple of days within the year. And that is where there's a major difference between a prosumer who would not necessarily export a lot of capacity as opposed to a IPP whose full generation is being exported onto the network. So this table basically just in terms of the prosumer versus the IPP lists the differences in terms of the load presence. So for the prosumer you have a load present, whereas for the IPP you don't. Grid export is partial for the prosumer, whereas for the IPP there's a full generation output. Regulatory category for its embedded generator, and then the independent power producer. And then the metering compliance for the prosumers and net metering, whereas for the IPP it's the full export method required. And then obviously in terms of the application is the for the prosumers is typically your industrial type of customers, but for the IPP would typically be a generating plant. So with that, having said that, this is where we get a lot of conflict within the grid code, where the grid code was written for pure IPPs, and it now needs to be approved with RETEC, which adds obviously to the duration of the approval, and obviously time is money for these type of systems as well. In terms of the technical requirements, the grid code is good in terms of all those requirements. However, in terms of the changes, if it is a prosumer which is behind the meter of a municipality, the idea should be that that municipality would be able to give the approval for those type of systems as they are basically seeing the impact of those systems onto their grid, and not typically all the way up to a ESCOM grid from an IPP perspective. Communications, obviously, we are in regular contact with our customers in terms of our communication campaigns and our engagements. This obviously is specifically being done to ensure customers are aware of our changes and why we're making those changes. So that we obviously do get the support and also the benefits to the customers to be able to move swiftly forward with the installations and installing our smart grid being sort of taking shape as we move ahead. And that is all from me. Thank you very much.